Okay, hang with me just a moment, Albert.
All good.
Okay, hey, Diana. Okay. Yeah, we're good. We're good.
I'm not sure we can hear Diana.
Diana, you have to unmute your microphone.
Oh, okay, very good.
Okay, there we go. There we go. There we go. Excellent.
Hi, Albert. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Diana?
Very good, thank you. I'm sorry, been outside, so I have to be ready.
Okay. Well, we are streaming live on YouTube, and we're hoping that Eno Schmidt will be joining us shortly, but let me just go ahead and intro the show, and I guess Eno will join us whenever he can.
I'll try to get him. Okay.
Okay. Well, first of all, welcome Diana Blackwell, who is a public housing tenant association president at Fred Samuel Houses in Central Harlem, and a community activist and champion for Harlem residents. And I have to give Diana credit for bringing UBI to the forefront on community and technology. We've been talking about this issue almost a year now. Thanks to Diana, she really put it on the agenda for us. And we hope to hear from Eno Schmidt, who is from Basel, Switzerland, and a longtime advocate of UBI. And today we're especially pleased to welcome Albert Wenger to our show, Community and Technology. Albert is a managing partner at Union Square Ventures, and before that was president of a Yahoo acquired company, Delicious. Albert graduated from Harvard College in Economics and Computer Science and holds a PhD in Information Technology from MIT. And most recently, Albert is a accomplished author, writer, and published an article called Putting the Economy in Suspended Animation, a proposal that deals with UBI and related economic issues. So welcome to you both to Community and Technology.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Albert, tell us a little bit about yourself, and this is a fascinating piece you put together, the proposal on putting the economy in suspended animation. About that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're going through a very big crisis here with the coronavirus, with COVID-19. And I think we are providing a lot of stimulus, but I think much of it goes into the wrong place. So I am very much a firm believer that most of this money should be going to individuals and maybe to small businesses, restaurants, corner grocery stores, etc. Instead, we're giving a lot of money to large corporations, effectively bailing out their shareholders. And it's interesting because we always say there's not enough money to do this, there's not enough money to do that. And then here we are with trillions of dollars magically. And so, you know, I have this book, it's called World After Capital, and I talk a lot about universal basic income. And I say we have the money, we just need to distribute it differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So your proposal specifically, how does it shake out? I know there's a UBI component to it.
Well, I think this is a unique moment in time. You know, we've had obviously Andrew Yang's campaign, which kind of brought universal basic income, I think, to a broader public.
Yeah.
We've now have, you know, Spain talking very publicly about adopting universal basic income. We've had the Pope mentioning it in his latest letter.
Yes.
And I think, you know, a number of people are realizing that if we had it in place already, I think we would be much more resilient in a crisis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Diana, you have a history with Albert. Did you meet him in your European travels, or?
No, this is my very first time meeting him.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Great to meet you, Diana.
Yes, yes. I felt like I really did know you because Eno has really spoken highly of you. In fact, him and I were talking. I said, well, I don't really know what a venture capitalist is. So he's kind of like directing me. And I'm thinking, okay, look, all I want to know is how is this going to work? And so I'm excited to meet you. But I do have a couple of questions.
Please, fire away.
Yeah, because of this, you know, just, I want you to look into the future a little bit. What do you think, the outcome of this crisis will be? Just look in the future because we are really
Well,
changing.
I think there's there's many possible futures, but there are two possible futures here that I think are worth talking about. One is where we kind of get our act together and where we figure out that really if the shareholders in some airline or some hotel company, if the shareholders get wiped out, but the people who work there keep their jobs, and the company goes on through bankruptcy. That's what bankruptcy is there for. If we can get ourselves on a path where we take care of individuals first, and maybe also small businesses, then I think we might come out of this in a way stronger. It's not the path we're on. And so the path we're on, I think, is one towards what I think is a weird form of capitalism where when things go wrong, the state bails you out. And when things go right, you pay yourself a huge bonus. And, I'm a venture investor. We're used to losing all our money. Like about a third of all the investments we make, we lose all our money. That's what it means to own equity. When you own equity, you might lose all your money. And so I think, I believe in capitalism. It has certain strengths. It has lots of weaknesses. It can't solve all problems. But what we have now isn't capitalism. We are literally failing. I mean, go back a crisis, go back to the global financial crisis of 2008. In 2010, bankers paid some of the biggest bonuses ever after we had bailed them out in 2008 with all of our money. That is just not, I think, the way to run capitalism.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to personally agree with you.
Some folks would call that corporate socialism.
It is. That's what we've been doing. Absolutely.
So now that you said that, now look at it in the way that we're really, really seeing it, because we're really seeing jobs being replaced. I read an article last night which really said that these companies are really reevaluating their staffing. They're finding out that they can actually do more with less, which means we're not going to have a normal. This is our normal. We're going into something new. When we come out of this, many people will lose their job because of automation, number one, because of the economy. Whether we have another stimulus or we begin something, jobs will, as we know it, be gone. How do we incorporate that in what we see now? And how
so let me maybe take a step back and talk for a moment about automation and the relationship between universal basic income and automation, which I think is often, presented the wrong way around. So the way the argument is generally presented, included by Andrew Yang, whom I love dearly and supported in his run for presidency, but it was presented as automation is coming, it's taking away your jobs, and that's why we need UBI. I think the causality runs the other way around, which is UBI will allow us to lead meaningful lives and benefit from automation. So I think, in fact, there are many jobs that could and should be automated today. These are not fun jobs. They're poorly paid jobs, cleaning bathrooms, but there's no incentive to automate them because there is this cheap labor force out there whom you can pay minimum wage, and they have no alternative. They have to take these very bad jobs because there's no alternative for living. And so I really think that we are stalled on certain types of automation, jobs that we could and should be automating, but we are not because we've made labor cheap because we give people no alternative. People do not have I call UBI, it's a walk-away option. You can walk away from a bad job. So many people cannot walk away from a job. And now, of course, we force them to walk away because we've shut down these jobs. So we have created a very, very bad scenario for a lot of individuals. But I think you're right, Dan, to point out that whenever we have a big crisis, and this was true for the financial crisis as well, many jobs disappear and only a smaller number of jobs comes back.
Yeah.
Now, we had a lot of job growth since 2008, but many of those jobs are very sort of precarious jobs. You know, it's jobs where
Mhm.
you have to have multiple shifts, the computer schedules your shift, you
Yeah.
know, you don't know when you should be showing up for work, like you get a
Yes.
text message last minute. And these are not jobs that allow people to lead normal and healthy and fulfilling lives. So I think the reason for UBI, and that's again emphasized by this crisis, is so that people can live even if they decide not to work in traditional jobs, because there's
Mm.
plenty of things for us to do, like plenty of things. We're not going to run out of things to do.
Mhm.
Like, you know,
Mhm.
just taking care of the environment, taking care of your friends. You know, how
Yeah.
many people right now would like to take care of people, but they still, you know, they can't. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I haven't run out of anything. Something
well,
came up.
there you
I've
go.
never run a pantry in my life, and here I have. I don't know how many. I have like almost a roving 20 under me, and I'm thinking like, what is this? I don't know anything about running a pantry, but yes, I am. You're right. We'll never run out of
We
jobs.
won't run out of things.
But
I don't think of them as jobs. I think of them, we won't run out of interesting and stimulating and important things to
Mhm.
do.
Right.
But so much work today that's taken for granted is unpaid work. Work at home, work taking care of your parents, your children, your friends, your neighborhood. It's all, you know, it's important that it happens, but it's unpaid. And so I try to avoid the word job, because for me, the word job connotes the thing you do to make the income.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more, Albert. You know, when I think of job, I think of, you know, what one of the musicians back in our day, Diana, Rahsaan Roland Kirk, called
Oh
volunteer
yes, yes, yes,
slavery.
yes. Right, right.
Volunteer slavery, where you're actually going to work voluntarily, but you're
Okay,
slaving to make somebody else wealthy, to work
right.
for somebody else's benefit.
Yeah.
And so many, I would say most of the jobs in this country are to benefit someone else, and just kind of almost tangentially, oh, here's your little piece of income to help you out. But it keeps us on the tether, keeps us on the dole, I would say, because you never really make enough money to break away and to
Well,
do some of the things that you're talking about, the creative things in life.
and so here's
Right.
the interesting thing. A lot of people, when I talk about UBI and I name low amounts, they go, well, but nobody can live off that. Nobody can live off $800 a month. You're crazy, Albert. But what the problem is, what people don't realize is we can't live off that because we live in New York City or Manhattan. But I
You
have
got
friends
that right.
who live in
That's the
Southern
point.
Massachusetts. They bought a bunch of houses together. They got the houses for free because the houses were basically falling down and the community was trying to get rid of them.
Hmm.
And you know, they pool a lot of their resources, and they live like they have home cooked meals every night, you know, and because they have a lot of time also. To me, the thing that's the sad part about what I call the job loop. So the job loop is this thing where you have a job, you get some money, you spend the money on consumption, a lot of consumption that you only do because somehow advertising has told you that it's
Yeah.
nice to have like 60 pairs of sneakers. Like
Mhm.
I have one pair of sneakers.
Hmm.
I'm wearing them right now. They're pretty ratty as a result, but they're totally fine, you know. Um, so um, so so much human attention is caught in that loop. Like you go to work, you make some money, you spend it on things you don't really need and they don't really make you happy, and you keep repeating, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And I think what UBI, where it really fundamentally transforms, is all of a sudden you can, like, I don't need to do that. I could be living in Western Mass or Detroit for still to this day, there are houses in Detroit that the city is tearing down because they can't find somebody to live there. They would give the person the house. So you could basically, if you had a basic income, so this is why it's not just a walk away option from a bad job. It's a walk away option from a bad city, a bad spouse, bad relationship. You know, anything where right now people are like, oh, I can't leave because then how do I feed myself? How do I house myself?
Mhm.
So that's why I think when people look at the amounts and they sometimes go, Albert, what are you talking about? It's way too little money. I don't think they understand how extraordinarily liberating it is once you're liberated from that. Okay, every day I just have to like go and do this job.
Mhm. You know, I couldn't agree with you more, Albert. The other piece, just kind of footnote that I would add to that treadmill that you say so many folks are on, is that all of that buying, or most of that buying, is at the company store. I mean,
Oh.
it's a really insidious cycle.
It's at the company store, and most importantly also is we have all this research in the world now today, right, that tells us we've done all this cognitive psychology, neuroscience, chemistry of the brain work, where we know that these consumption gives you this brief dopamine hit. You're like happy when you buy the new sneakers for like 6 hours, and then that's it.
Then you need another hit.
Yeah, you need another hit, right?
Yeah.
And so, whereas things like giving back, providing service, having an experience outdoors, listening to music, making music, those things we know provide deep and lasting joy in people's lives, right? And so we have massively over-indexed on the thing that we know doesn't actually give you any kind of lasting benefit, and massively under-indexed on all the things that make us uniquely human, right? I mean, animals don't have instruments. You know, I love animals, but have you heard animals making jazz or other beautiful music? I haven't, you know.
My birds do. My
only
birds
birds
do.
sing.
Okay, birds. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yes.
Take up for the one for the birds.
Fair point. Entirely fair point.
I like what you're saying, and I'm learning a new term because I've learned a lot from Eno, and I like that walk away option. But I'm living in public housing right now. I'm very fortunate because before I call this my little pathway to heaven because I was married, bad marriage, blah, 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 and ended up here. But I brought everything I had here, trying to raise the standard of living here around anyone around me. But I look at a lot of the other people and they have not, they're thinking inside of a box. They know that they have a place to stay. They feel like they're inheriting what where they're living. They feel like they're in a job of some sort, or they're not on a job, they're on welfare. And this really becomes a picture where people on the outside never believe that people within public housing will ever come out of this rut. So why should we give them money to do nothing? My question is, it's a walk away option, true, but what about changing the people's mind that are going to issue this money? How can we say that it's an option
Sure.
that anyone receiving it can have, whether
No,
they
I think
want to?
I think it's a great question, and I think it starts with, I think we have such a limited view of human potential, I think, unfortunately, especially for people whom somehow we've deemed to not
Yeah.
be fit, right?
And that's so wrong.
And I think, you know, it's very important that universal basic income isn't some kind of panacea. It's not like you have universal basic income and everything will be like beautiful. So in my book, I write a lot about some of the other things we need to change. And I do think one of the things we really need to change a lot about is kind of the psychology of what we think human achievement is about and what we think being human is about. And, you know, we've spent about 200 years since the onset of the Industrial Revolution kind of defining ever more strictly human like value and achievement through how much you get paid in your job. And I think especially in the US, we've really gone down this path of, well, if you paid a lot, then whatever you're doing is somehow valuable, and by translation, you're valuable. And I think it's going to take us some time to get away from that, because that has sunk so deeply into people's minds. And if there's maybe a silver lining in this crisis, is that I think we're seeing that some of the most valuable people are people that we often don't think about. It's the nurses, it's, you know, it's the delivery workers, it's the short order cooks.
Yeah,
you know.
the grocery store cashier.
Yeah, absolutely. And so so I think there is a big mindset shift that's required, and mindset shifts are hard because, you know, very few people are willing to change their mind about pretty much anything is a choice.
Anything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when people ask me how long a project do I think this is, I always say this is a multi-generational project, because it's people have to grow up in a different environment, in a different school system. Look, our school system today is a system that evolved completely coincident with the industrial age. It's an industrial age system that creates industrial age products, standardized students taking standardized tests. And I think one of the things we're seeing in this crisis is much of the school system is about just locking kids up. It's
Yeah.
basically like,
Mhm.
here you're locked up for 8 hours so that your parents can go to work,
Right.
Yes.
have a job. So like we see how all these things hang together, and we take them kind of, once you've grown up in this system and you've never seen anything else, I think for a lot of people, it's like, this is just how life is. This is life. It's like you go to school, you have a job, you die, that's it. And we have become so limited in what we think humanity is about. And so it's going to take us a lot of time to unwind.
Mm.
Mhm.
Well, that's a shame, because what you're saying is that the powers that be will take a long time to change. So that's really what we have to break through on those
Well,
that are.
we can all start with ourselves too, right? So,
Mhm,
in the book, I talk about 3 freedoms. I call them economic freedom,
mhm,
informational freedom, and psychological freedom.
mhm,
Economic freedom is the thing we've been talking about. It's the universal basic income. But let me skip to a moment to psychological freedom. So, our brain evolved over a long period of time in an environment where when you saw a cat, there was an actual cat. Now, the internet can show you an infinity of cat pictures. And each time your brain goes, oh, cute, a cat. Because that's how your brain evolved. And the problem is advertising understands this incredibly well. And so it associates products with images that our brain responds positively to, right? And so the good news, though, is that we know that there are techniques, and they broadly fall under this nebulous word of mindfulness, but there are techniques by which we can become better in charge of our own brain. And different people have different things. For some people it's yoga, for some people it's running, for some people it's meditating, for me it's breathing. I do these breathing exercises. I do them every morning, I do them every evening. Quite short, just a couple of minutes, but I do them religiously. And here's the strange thing. I just talked about education. You can go through all of high school, all of even like college, never be asked to take a mindfulness class, never be taught about your brain, never understand how you're constantly being manipulated, and never work on how do you get that distance to what is being presented to you, and sort of have that ability to step back and go, well, you know what? I don't actually need a 60th pair of sneakers.
mhm,
To be able to have that distance instead, like I want, and it's the
right,
impulse,
right,
and
right.
everything is designed to foster that impulse and then make you act on it with like one
Yeah.
click buy. And we all can start there, and we don't need to wait for the powers that be. We don't need to wait for anybody to give us permission to develop some degree of psychological freedom.
I'm hoping, Albert. I'm a child of the '60s, and I remember a time when all the media was very narrowly focused, and we did not have a lot of choices. And fast forward 40, 50 years, the choices are tremendous. And the other shift that is even more powerful to me is that we now have the ability to become producers of media, not just consumers.
Absolutely.
And to me, that is so fundamental. And that's something that I try and teach to my kids and folks that I work with, and anybody that'll listen, that we need to take control of these tools and this media and start to use it to foster our own growth, our own development, as
Couldn't
opposed
agree
to
more.
being mere consumers of it all.
Couldn't
And
agree more.
I'm hoping that, as you said a little bit ago, that this pandemic is going to be a real slap in the face for so many folks. And I hope it's going to be a wake-up call, Diana, to your point about when are things going to start to change. I think folks are starting to kind of look at the world with a new lens now.
Yep. I agree. I think people are going to see that certain things that they took for granted aren't necessarily so, and that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Diane, are you seeing any shifting in folks' thinking? I know you're busy just dealing with feeding people and keeping folks moving and alive, but are you starting to see any shift in their thinking and how they're kind of processing what's going on?
Well, I'll tell you, today is the first day of the stimulus, and a lot of people received it. So
Okay.
I don't really know at this moment, because all I could see was long lines at the bank and smiling faces.
Mhm.
You know, they were even patiently waiting, distancing themselves, and I'm like, oh gosh, I know what's in their checkbook. So it's like, I don't know right now. You know, it's the first day, like I said, you know. So the shift will come once they are able to spend this money that they didn't have, and hopefully they use it wisely.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think when you're in a really almost survival mode because you can't make rent and you don't know, bank account is empty, you can't buy food and so forth, your ability to think straight declines dramatically. There's a book that really documents all the research on that, and it shows that to some degree, when you're that stressed out, you're as incapacitated as if you're drunk in terms of your ability to just form like logical, straight thoughts. So I really think this crisis had put tremendous amount of pressure on a lot of people, mental pressure. And I do hope that getting a check will relieve that to some degree. But let's just talk about that for a moment. It's the year 2020. We are sending people paper checks. This is so wrong. We're making them go to the bank to deposit their check. I mean, like, the fact that we don't have the infrastructure to just send everybody $1,200 onto their phone, that's nuts. You can go to Kenya and everybody has money on their phone.
Wow.
So there's a lot of catching up to do. And there's a lot that we need to invest in so that we have the ability to just give people money and not need to put a paper check in the mail, send it to them, and have them go to the bank to deposit it.
Yeah, when you said that, I couldn't help but think about voting, Albert, and what we just witnessed out in Wisconsin last week with all those long lines.
Insanity.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I think we face the risk of the biggest voter disenfranchisement in the history of the United States, and I'm not saying this lightly because I know how much has already happened. But I think polling places are largely staffed by older people, who volunteer. They're at the highest risk group. I think there'll be more closure of polling places than ever before as a result. States aren't set up for enough mail-in ballots. A lot of people don't know that they can mail in their vote. There's going to be early deadlines to request your ballot. In many states, you can only request your ballot if you already have been sent the request form. I mean, it's just, you're absolutely right, Stuart. I think it's a huge problem. It's going to be a huge problem for the November election if we don't get on top of it ASAP. And it's obviously it's a state by state thing. So especially in the swing states, Florida, for example, Ohio, I think this is going to be seen as an opportunity, unfortunately, to really suppress the vote.
Yeah, I was a little dismayed. I saw a survey result crawled across the screen last night on the news that said 40% of the population, U.S. population, would be comfortable with postponing the November election. And I was appalled, that anybody would even ask that question. Just to ask that question is like, I mean, it kind of begs the answer. It kind of pushes that, that result, potential result. But I was like, oh my God. I mean, in the back of my mind, I've been just kind of kicking around with my wife and colleagues about I'm concerned about the November election being somehow sabotaged or not happening because of what's going on with the virus and because of who is sitting in the White House. But when I saw that statistic, I was a little unnerved. You guys see that at all?
No, I just want to say, Albert, I did get my request to put in my absentee ballot today.
Mm, okay.
So I didn't see what you saw, Stu, but Albert, I
Mhm.
did. I
Mhm.
actually
Good.
did get my
Mhm.
request.
Good.
But you talked about money, Albert, on distributing on this device. Why not enable voting, digital voting?
It's a very controversial topic. So there
Mhm.
is a pretty big divide in the computer science community. I would say there's a majority of people who believe that we currently don't have the technological capabilities to secure online voting. There's a
Mhm.
minority who think it can be done. I'm probably in that minority who think it can be done. I think we would have to change some of the things about how we vote. And there's no way. One thing I can say for sure, even though I'm in the minority who believes that it can be done, there's no way to do it properly between now and November.
Right.
So
Mhm.
our available option is mail-in ballots, and we know how to do this. We know how to do it securely. The USPS does a great job of tracking mail these days. Everybody will be able to see that their vote was received. So I think we have some very good analog plus digital technology working for us. But I agree with you, Stuart. A few years from now, I do think we should be able to vote from our devices. But
Mhm.
there's some big hurdles to overcome to get there.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes.
Wow.
I want to be mindful of his time, Stu.
Mhm.
You know, Albert, how are you on your time?
I'm doing great.
Okay.
My next call isn't until 5 o'clock. I'll like to take
Okay.
a short break
Okay.
before that, but I've got plenty of time. So
Okay.
let me talk maybe very briefly, if you indulge me, on this third freedom that I mentioned, which is the informational freedom, which actually has
Mhm.
something to do with these devices. So um, we all carry around with us a supercomputer. If you went back a few decades, no amount of money could have bought you this kind of compute power, never mind in this form factor, something you can slip in your pocket.
Mhm.
Also, each one of our supercomputers can talk to each other supercomputer anywhere in the world. It is an extraordinary set of capabilities. It is completely mind-blowing. And it goes back to Stuart, something you said earlier. We can all be producers, right?
Mhm.
Also, with this device, you can basically learn anything you would like to learn in the world because you can have access to all this information. But there's a problem. And this problem is when you hit one of these application icons, the app completely takes over your supercomputer. And you're reduced to like using your thumbs and the stuff that's between your ears, whereas on the opposite, like your own supercomputer is no longer working on your behalf. And it's connected now to all these servers. Like when it's talking to Facebook, it's connected to, or Google, to millions of servers. So it's this in fundamental asymmetry in who controls computation. And the informational freedom chapter of my book is all about what do we need to do to get back in control of these devices? Because a lot of these devices, once you hit one of these application icons, the app is designed to hog as much of your attention as possible, right? Once you're inside of Facebook, Facebook wants to show you another clip and another clip and another
Yeah.
clip. Facebook isn't going to say, hey, now might be a good time to get up and do the dishes. Like Facebook's never going to say that.
Mhm.
So, we need to get back in charge of our devices. Otherwise, our devices are in charge of us.
That's right.
And so that's what the informational freedom chapter is about.
Mhm.
By the way, the book's online. It's called World
Wait,
After
wait.
Capital.
I'm sorry. Say it again. What's the title?
It's called World After Capital.
Okay.
And you can find it at worldaftercapital.org.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of writing it, still ongoing. So I get feedback from people and I incorporate that. And it's
Mhm.
Creative Commons licensed, so
Mhm.
anybody can reproduce it in, if it's non-commercial.
Mhm.
And it has a fundamental idea, and it's sort of an idea that we've been talking about a little peripherally. But the idea basically is that digital technology, computers, require us to invent a new human age. So, we've had the forager age, then we invented agriculture, then we had the agrarian age, then we invented industry, then we had the industrial age, then we invented computers. We are stuck in the industrial age. And like, if you wonder, how did we wind up with
Why?
something like Trump? How did we wind up with Brexit? Well, we wound up with these things because for the last 20 some years or so, maybe even longer, the industrial system has stopped working for a lot of people. And we haven't created a new vision. We haven't said, here's the thing that comes. And in the book, I call it the knowledge age. We don't have a vision for the knowledge age. And look, I voted for Obama twice, but let's be real. Obama was an incrementalist. Obama, with Geithner's and Summers' help, bailed out Wall Street. We had banks that were too big to fail. After that, we had banks that were even bigger. You know, he was an incrementalist. Hillary Clinton would have been an incrementalist. And unfortunately, incremental change is not going to get it done. And so one of the reasons we wind up with people like Trump is because we've created this vacuum where we're sort of saying, hey, all these small changes are going to get it done. And people are like, what are you talking about? Like, it's not working for me. It hasn't been working for me for a decade. And you're talking about like making some small change. I'm going to go press the nuclear button. I'm going to vote for this guy who's going to blow it all up. And you know, if you look at it, I think it's understandable. I think it's understandable. People are fed up and they want more dramatic change. And we have, when I say we, I mean people in tech, people in economics, we have failed to offer a new vision. And I'm not saying I have some perfect, beautifully thought out vision, but at least I'm taking a stab at it.
That's great. Oh my gosh. I love it.
That's fascinating. You know, when as you were speaking, Albert, you know, I kind of, you're talking about how the digital devices just kind of take control of us, and I flash back to, you know, something I used to say when I made the I used to be a video producer back in the old days when video was brand new, and when I made the transition from black and white, which is all that was initially available to consumer level, to color. And I noticed in our studios that you could not stop watching a color monitor. And I started this phrase that I kick around still today: you will watch me. When that TV is on in a room, you have to really consciously focus your mind someplace else to not look at it. I mean,
I am so with you. I'm exhibit A. When I go into a restaurant or a bar and there's a monitor, I cannot help myself but look at it. I just can't do it.
Yeah, you will watch me. And fast forward another 30 years or so, it's the same thing with our digital portable devices. It's the same thing. You know, folks pull those things out on the train, on the bus. I mean,
nobody reads a book, nobody reads the paper.
Hypnotized by them.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree with you more. In many ways, the applications are running us. They're controlling us. We're not really in control of what we're doing on these devices. And so, that has to change.
That has to change. And so now you can kind of see that these three freedoms that I described, economic freedom, informational freedom, and psychological freedom, they all work in concert with each other, right? So like if you get $800 or $1,000 every month, you will find it easier to sort of find the willpower and, you know, because you're not coming home from a job where you've worked like 12 hours, you're totally beat. So of course you're going to take this thing and be a consumer.
Yeah.
Right. It's when we free up your time, all of a sudden, now you can be a producer. And if we free you up informationally so that you can program this device, all sorts of amazing things are going to happen. So these three are all designed to kind of mutually reinforce each other. And I really believe that we can, you know, reach this knowledge age. And I want to maybe leave you with one sort of parting thought here. If you go back to, let's say, the 1780s or so, 80% of human attention was stuck in agriculture. It's 80% of like people woke up and worked all day, every day to feed the 20% who were not in agriculture, right? And of course, today that's sub 5%. Like in the US, it's just like 3% is agriculture and everybody else. But here's the thing. Everybody else is in this economic activity. Everybody else is stuck in this job loop. It's this like make money to spend it, make it, spend it. And I think if we do this right, we have this extraordinary new set of technological capabilities. If we do this right, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, we will look back and be like, oh my God, 80% of human activity was stuck in the job loop, and only 20% was doing like beautiful things. And it's not going to go away, but it could go down to 20%, and it would free up 80% of human attention to do these things that like are like things that we distinctly can do as humans, you know. And so I think it's just this extraordinary opportunity that's been presented to us, but we need to let go of the industrial age in order to get there. And we're so deeply stuck in it.
Well, I think this crisis that we're currently in, this pandemic, is gonna be a bit of a kick in the pants in that direction. We're letting go of a whole lot of stuff right through here.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm an optimist at heart, as you can tell, and I do think that's the silver lining here. The silver lining in this crisis is that people go, "Why? Like what?" You know. So I agree. I agree.
Oh, wow.
Diana, any parting comments or questions for Albert before we have to let him go?
Well, first thing I want to say thank you very much. And I really would like to do it again, this time with Eno. I just want to let you know, he did move to the countryside of Germany. I'm thinking maybe he doesn't have a good signal because he never misses. We're still new at this, but he would not have missed it. He begged for me to have you.
Well, Diana and Stuart, it's my pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to having the next one in person, which will be a lot of fun.
Oh, I hope so.
Thank
you.
Take care.
Okay.
All the best to you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to listen to Albert Wenger and Diana Blackwell and Stu Reed, Community and Technology. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.